Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now there has been a good back and forth between Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder once again. I'm wondering if these two are ever going to step in the ring together, because if they do, the build up, the fight, it would be incredible. I'm not entirely convinced that it will ever happen, but at some point I hope it does. Deontay Wilder had plenty of opportunities to face him in the ring, and if he believes he's better, if he believes that Dillian Whyte should be quiet, then get him in the ring and make him be quiet. That's the kind of way I look at it anyway. But that hasn't happened as of yet, and Wilder must face Tyson Fury next. If he loses that, is there any possibility of a Dillian Whyte fight? Well, perhaps that is Deontay Wilder's only option if he does want to come back to the boxing ring, which could be questionable if he is unable to beat Tyson Fury. There are options out there for him, but the biggest fight he could make after another loss to Tyson Fury would definitely be Dillian Whyte. Obviously there is the AJ fight, but AJ isn't going to fight Deontay Wilder if he has just lost consecutive fights to Tyson Fury. What's the point in him doing that? There are bigger fish to fry. Even a fight with Dillian Whyte himself would come before a Deontay Wilder fight in that situation. Now, the back and forth started when Deontay Wilder spoke about Dillian Whyte. He said he ate nothing but basically a piece of toilet paper that he flushed away a year ago. But let him keep fighting, keep going mate, soon we will see each other once again. He is the scum between my toes. So that's a pretty horrible comment to make towards Dillian Whyte. And, I mean, Dillian Whyte is obviously going to come back and respond to that. This is what he had to say. He just talks rubbish the whole time. When you ask him a question that he can't answer because he's not smart or eloquent enough, he just spins a web of talking crap to distract from the fact that he is an idiot, basically. So that is what Dillian Whyte has said. He's also said a few other things as well. This is what he had to say about a potential fight between him and Wilder. It's a shame Tyson Fury is going to beat him again, and I won't get to fight him. He'll probably just blame his wife, or his kids, or his dog, or his cat. He should just accept reality. He's a pathetic, fragile, fraud clown. So, there we go, back and forth between Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder. Didn't necessarily happen so much on social media, so there wasn't a back and forth, but there were comments made in interviews, separate interviews, and then obviously Dillian Whyte was asked to respond to what Deontay Wilder had said. The interesting thing is when Deontay Wilder says I dealt with him a year ago, he didn't necessarily deal with him a year ago because he didn't step in the ring with him. Now, there were plenty of opportunities for him to do that, even a big money offer on the table for him to face Dillian Whyte. Yet that fight still didn't happen, and the interesting thing about Wilder, and even Tyson Fury does it sometimes, when they don't want to fight someone, they say, I'm not interested in that guy because he doesn't bring the numbers, he's not a big enough name, he's not a big enough draw, and they aren't interested in fighting someone like that because what do they gain? Then they go and fight someone, in the case of Deontay Wilder, like Luis Ortiz. Dominic Breazeale, who of course was his mandatory, should have been Dillian Whyte, but that's another conversation. And Tyson Fury fights someone like Otto Wallin or Tom Schwartz. So you can see a pattern emerging from both of them, and at the moment of course we are talking about Deontay Wilder. But I do find it interesting how, mainly Wilder, they say this guy's not on my level, he doesn't belong in the ring with me, but then they go and fight an opponent who is a lower level, way lower level than Dillian Whyte himself. Because are we expected to believe that Luis Ortiz is of Dillian Whyte's level? If they step in the ring together, Luis Ortiz has a chance to prove it, but aside from that, who has he faced and beat to prove that? Dillian Whyte has been in there with Joe Parker, Povetkin, so he's proven that he is of a certain level, but Luis Ortiz has not done that. Every single time he stepped up to world level, he came unstuck. 2 fights with Deontay Wilder, 2 losses against Deontay Wilder. So he cannot get away by using the excuse that Dillian Whyte is not a big enough name, he's not an interesting enough fight, doesn't bring value for money like Luis Ortiz does, because he definitely does. There was a lot of money on the table for Deontay Wilder to face Dillian Whyte, yet he still didn't want it. And let's be real, he didn't want to face Dillian Whyte. For whatever reason. I'm not even saying it's just because he was scared. I'm not saying that. I mean, some of it could be because he just doesn't want to give him an opportunity at a world title and maybe at earning a few bucks, but to be honest, Dillian Whyte is earning good money by fighting the likes of Joe Parker, Oscar Rivas, and Alexander Povetkin because he has set that precedent of facing top opponents. I mean, are we going to say that Deontay Wilder has a better resume than Dillian Whyte? I mean, 2 fights with Tyson Fury, 2 fights with Luis Ortiz. The Fury fights, okay, but he drew one of them and he lost one of them. The Luis Ortiz fights, I mean, again, going back to Luis Ortiz, who has he beaten? How has he proven himself in the heavyweight division? Those are questions that we can ask if he's going to say Dillian Whyte is nothing compared to him, because going off of his statement, that is basically what he is saying. So I would be inclined to respond to that statement by saying, one of them talks about it, one of them does it. Deontay Wilder is constantly saying how he's number one. He's this whole other entity in the heavyweight division. He's amazing. He cannot lose a fight, and when he does, there are so many excuses for the reasons why. Dillian Whyte made 0 excuses in his loss to Povetkin. Same with the loss to Anthony Joshua, 0 excuses. Look at the amount of excuses that have came from Deontay Wilder, because he does not believe that on a fair playing field, he can get beat. That was a fair playing field. In fact, things would have been swayed slightly in Deontay Wilder's favour in that fight with Tyson Fury, yet still Fury won. But Wilder just cannot accept that, and he does constantly say he is number one, he is the biggest, baddest, he punches the hardest in the heavyweight division. When do you really hear Dillian Whyte talk like that? Like he's number one, like he's been there, done it all. I mean, obviously he's going to say that he's done this, he's done that, and be proud of his achievements, but talkers talk, doers do things that get talked about, and I believe that is the thing that separates Deontay Wilder and Dillian Whyte. I know that Deontay Wilder's been champion, WBC, 10 defenses, fair play, but if you look at who those defenses have been against, then you start to wonder, what level is Deontay Wilder? Do we even consider him as up there with the top 3? Is he part of AJ Fury and Wilder? Or is it AJ Fury and Whyte? Maybe Andy Ruiz? There are other fighters around there that Deontay Wilder hasn't even faced, and they are fighters he needs to face to prove he is of that level. He can be mentioned alongside AJ and Fury. Now, I don't want to discredit what Deontay Wilder has done because he has been champion, 10 title defenses, and you would have to say his best win has come against Luis Ortiz. Whether you want to choose the first one or the second one, I would say that the first one is more impressive because Luis Ortiz at that time was unbeaten, and Wilder had to overcome adversity in order to win that night because he was hurt, he was backed up, and he was caught in that whirlwind. Things could have been shaky for a few moments there for Deontay Wilder. So in my opinion, the first Luis Ortiz fight is Deontay Wilder's best victory. Now, I'm not saying he cannot beat an Andy Ruiz, or an Oscar Rivas, maybe a Joseph Parker, but he needs to prove it, and the only way he can do that is getting in the ring with them. Dillian Whyte has done that. He's proven he can be in there with a Povetkin, an Oscar Rivas, a Joe Parker, former world champion, and get the victory. Deontay Wilder has faced Tyson Fury, and fair enough, but he drew the first one and he lost the second one, so you can see when he gets to a certain level he does come unstuck. He got outboxed conclusively by Tyson Fury. In the second fight, he got beaten up by Tyson Fury. So 2 different styles that Tyson Fury employed in 2 separate bouts were good enough to beat Deontay Wilder. I know the first one stands at a draw, but come on, let's be real. We all know who won that fight. So therefore, Wilder is left in a situation of having to prove himself, yet he still believes he is number one. That could be part of the problem in the downfall of Deontay Wilder. I do not like comments like he has made towards Dillian Whyte, because that is him trying to discredit what Whyte has done, and also it's just not a very nice way to put it. And I do hope that they get to step in the ring and prove who is number one out of the 2 of them, to put this to bed, for them to have it out in the ring, because they are boxers after all, and that is where they have to back up their talk. Will Deontay Wilder ever step in the ring with Dillian Whyte? That is the big question. That could be the only fight for him if he is to lose to Tyson Fury, because if he wins, he won't want to face Dillian Whyte. If he loses, Whyte could be his only option, along with maybe a Ruiz fight, but that's another conversation. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.